Welcome to the Healing Our Sight podcast. I'm your host, Denise Allen, and today my guest is Elisa Haransky-Beck. She was on a while ago, and we're bringing her back today because her book is out. Welcome, Elisa.
Thank you, Denise. Thank you for this opportunity.
I'm grateful that we can figure out a way to make this happen today. It's great. So, uh, tell us a little bit about how your book came into being.
Well, so as you know, and others may or may not know, I've been a neurodevelopmental functional behavioral developmental optometrist. Yes, that's a mouthful. Specializing in natural eyesight improvement, optometric vision therapy, movement therapy, and education, and other things for many decades. And I realize that a lot of the time people don't know what I'm talking about. Like they've never heard of the idea of improving your eyesight naturally or reducing your eyeglass prescription. And so I just decided it was time for me as I had actually completed my master's thesis in 2019, that I should write a book. And that's kind of the thumbnail sketch of how the idea of a book began. And so it was back in 2019. And I'm trying to remember, I didn't quite do my homework today before coming onto this podcast, what year we did the last podcast, but I know that my book was not yet published. So it was prior to February of 2024 that we spoke, because that's when my book was published. It may have been January of 2024, but I'm really not sure. But in any case, I'm very excited, and I know you're not seeing me, but Denise and I are seeing one another. So I'm just holding up the cover of my hardcover book, and it's called Enlivening Consciousness, Deepening Your Journey Through Vision, Movement, Nutrition, Nature, and Spirit. And so, my author name is my full name, which is Elisa Beth Haransky-Beck, OD, which refers to Doctor of Optometry. And you may or may not know that an optometrist goes generally to 4 years of undergraduate school and then goes to 4 years of optometry school. And so that's my author name, with my OD degree after
Right.
it. And my book is really kind of centered. The first, probably more than the first third of the book is based in vision and movement. And I'm happy to talk about all of it today. So
Awesome.
yeah, that's
Yes.
why. That's why.
I just went back to look at when you were on. It was actually May of 2023. And we talked about the somatic yoga primarily, I think, when we spoke that day. It was
Interesting. Okay.
only a half hour, so I don't know if we covered more than that. I'd have to go back and listen.
Well, oh yeah, the listeners will have to go back and listen. I want to learn about. I am still teaching somatic yoga on Wednesday mornings from 10:30 to 11:30 Eastern. But people come in from all around the world. And if anybody's interested, they're welcome to reach out to me. I'll repeat this at the end, I'm sure, but through my website, enliveningconsciousness.com, you can reach me directly. I'm the one on the other end of that website. So I will answer you directly, and you can come to my class. And I encourage that, really, with open arms.
It's such a great class. I I don't think people probably actually know how much goes into becoming a developmental optometrist on top of the optometry school piece of it too. There's so much extra training that you do.
Yeah. So I, in my fourth year of optometry school, at least at the school I went to at the time, it was called the Pennsylvania College of Optometry. It then became part of Salus University. They added in audiology. And now it is part of Drexel University. But I studied in my 4th year of optometry school. We do rotations through different types of practices. And in addition to working at a VA, a Veterans Administration hospital for 3 months in Philadelphia, I was in a private practice, in a couple of private practices in Reading, Pennsylvania. And then I did a 3-month rotation through the pediatrics department at the Pennsylvania College of Optometry, which is where I learned, it was my beginning training in working with children that had vision-related learning issues, and also what's called strabismus, crossed eyes, and amblyopia, decreased vision in one eye or the other eye, and other forms of vision-related learning issues. And so my interest was really piqued at that point, and the private practice that I rotated through, the private practices in Reading, also had specialists there who worked in the area of vision therapy. And and I then went on to work with Harry Wax at the Reading Center at George Washington University. He's one of the granddaddies of developmental vision care. And just I worked with the Behavioral Vision Project optometrists, kind of the disciples, if you will, of Bruce Wolfe and John Streff and Jerry Getman and Robert Kraskin. And there's a whole long list of people that are still alive today, like Paul Harris. And there's just a whole bunch of people that are developmental optometrists, and that are part of, the Optometrists in Vision Development and Rehabilitation Association, and other, the Neuro-Optometric Rehabilitation Association. And there are other optometric organizations that promote natural eyesight improvement for children and adults. And it's always a time, in my very opinionated view, to begin, even if you've never heard of this before, not only improving your eyesight, but maintaining what you have, minimally maintaining what you have, and then having the opportunity to improve is something that is just, in my view, so important, because it's not just about your eyeballs, but it's about improving your whole energetic nature and your whole body, your whole soma, your whole awareness, and being more fully the human that you were meant to be. Because in my view, we all step onto this earth in human form for a very specific reason. And as the years have gone by, in my more elder years, I've recognized that that we really are here for a very specific reason, and it's high time to figure out what that is by getting out of your own way. And so I'll just wind back to my book, because that's why I wrote my book, because the title, Enlivening Consciousness, and I resisted, my husband was saying, well, people are going to call the book that. That's the title. And I was like, no, there's a whole title. The title is Enlivening Consciousness, Deepening Your Journey Through Vision, Movement, Nutrition, Nature, and Spirit. And my husband, Stan, was like, no, Elisa, you don't understand. The title is just those first 2 words. And we went back and forth for a while, but now what I understand, because I have a published book now, is that the title really is Enlivening Consciousness. But again, just like nobody necessarily, not nobody, but many people in the world population don't know what that means. They also don't know what a developmental optometrist is, or what's involved in the training or the continuing education, or blah, blah, blah. And so my book is an introduction to the idea of how you can wake up to your own essence and beauty and brilliance and specific purpose, rooted in vision, because that's my bias. And vision really is a broad term,
It is.
So
Yeah. And I think that there's so little understanding of how our vision can improve. We take it for granted that it's going to get worse as we age, and that there's we're told there's nothing we can do about it. Put on the glasses, get the readers, whatever it is, put up with the macular degeneration and the cataracts. You just have surgery, right? And I just want to change the narrative. I appreciate that that's what you're doing, is helping to change the narrative.
Yes. So if it's okay with you, I'm going to read a few excerpts from my book, and I'm just going to pick just a few pages to read. And I'm going to start with chapter 1. And I do want to do an audio book. Right now, my book is available just right now as of what's today, June 24th. Happy post solstice, everybody. June 24th, 2024. My book is just available in a softback, softcover, or hardcover. It's not yet available as an ebook on purpose, and it's not yet available as an audiobook because I want to read it in my own voice. And it turns out that's an interesting journey in itself. So I'm going to read to you chapter 1, page 1 of my book. And chapter 1 is called An Introduction to Enlivening Consciousness. Open sesame. How do we step into our fullness? How do we rise into our incredible potential from love? This book is an introductory deep dive for some, and for others, the subject matter will be familiar and comforting. Why care about improving our eyesight and insight? Why study movement? Why care about the food, drink, and other substances we put inside our bodies or ingest? Why do so many have so-called medicine cabinets? Do we really need supplements? What do preserving and creating living soil have to do with anything? And how does the soil relate to the water and air being pure, fresh, and good for us? Why connect with nature daily, our inner and outer nature? How does our inner nature, our multiple microbiomes, relate to the natural world, earth, sky, and cosmos? What am I doing here? What are we doing here? What is this human experience? And I've written human, Humyn. Think about that. What do meditation, mindfulness, prayer, and present moment awareness have to do with enlivening our consciousness and allowing God or spirit to work through us? These are some of the questions we will ponder in this book. We'll weave in and out, back and forth, up and down, and all around between different subjects and different ways of being. So that's the end of chapter 1. I mean, the page 1 of chapter 1, right?
Right.
And so I've worked in the book to interweave these 5 different sections. Some might think that these are unrelated subjects, and I've been gifted a foreword by Victoria Moran, who is prominent in the plant-based world. She's also a yoga teacher. She's in the process of creating an incredible movie right now. Fiction, actually, but a really interesting movie. And so she writes in the foreword, I don't know if I can find it so quickly, but she writes in the foreword something about, if you've picked up this book, then, I can't, I'm just going to paraphrase it because I can't find it directly, but she says something like, you may think that these 5 sections are unrelated, but that couldn't be farther from the truth. And then she also says, a bit of forewarning, there's a lot here. You may find yourself thinking, wait a minute, I was just absorbing one concept and here's another one. But that's just it. These various areas of subject matter are the antithesis of divergent and disconnected. You might be improving physical vision or inner sight by moving the body. Perhaps you're recreating your physical form with lots of fresh, raw foods from the plant kingdom, imbued with life and color. Or you could be practicing gratitude, making peace within your family, or moving through duality into recognition and oneness. And she goes on. But Victoria Moran, who you might be interested in interviewing someday, Denise, is the author of the books Creating a Charmed Life, The Love Power Diet, and Main Street Vegan. So she's really interesting, and I'm sure would be happy to talk with you, because I think through me, I have to say, she's aware now that what she does has everything to do with preserving and improving vision. And so I am so interested in helping people to interweave the different parts of the world into an understanding of how they can rise through their visual systems using all these other modalities that are so supportive that the mainstream medical system just doesn't yet talk about it often enough.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. In last episode, when I was talking to my next door neighbor, she did mention that her son made really rapid progress at the time, in the time frame when they went vegan.
Oh, magnificent. That is beautiful. Who was that? Who was that you interviewed?
She's my new next door neighbor. She moved in next door to me and started talking, and she said, "Oh, my son did vision therapy with Dr. Price." And so we discussed it on
Nothing,
my
no,
podcast.
no accidents, right? No
Right.
accidents.
Yeah. It happens all the time, actually, to me, whenever I venture out in public in a place where, statistically speaking, I should not meet anyone else that's strabismic. And I always do.
Wait a minute, is she, I don't know, since it's too personal, is she a strabismic next door neighbor?
No, her son was in vision therapy because
Okay.
he had strabismus.
Uh-huh. Uh-huh. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah. Very interesting indeed.
Yeah. And I also had an a little thing I did on my website years and years ago where I talked about how I decided to do um, natural yeast bread, right? And and I had comments from friends that were like, "How is that connected to vision?" And I just didn't take the effort to try and explain how it was connected. I took it off because it was not making sense to people. And I probably shouldn't have given into the, pressure.
Well, maybe at some point you can do an outtakes podcast. Just
Well, it
we,
wasn't, yeah, it wasn't on my podcast. It was just on my website way back in the beginning when I was on my vision healing journey and hadn't gained 3D yet.
oh, beautiful. Yeah. Yeah. So as we gain 3D, our single simultaneous binocular vision, our lives change, and the depth literally of our um, life experience, you know, it deepens, it becomes more rich and dimensional. And that's not a metaphor, that's real, that's true. And what we put into our body, a natural yeast is certainly better than a GMO Monsanto pesticide laden piece of bread. And so these are all mycelial, I call them mycelial connections in my book.
Mhm.
The mycelium are the fungus that are, like part of the deep mycelial networks at the base of the roots of mushrooms underneath the soil. Those connections are also inside our bodies,
Mm.
and keeping ourselves clean and pure and fresh and empty, allows positivity and creativity and dimension and depth to flow in
Mhm.
much more easily. So the vision chapters of my book, chapters 2, 3, and 4, are called Exploring Vision, Eyesight, and Beyond. Chapter 3 is Considering Typical Eye Care Through a Wider Lens. And then chapter 4 is a look at holistic eye care. And so I've taken the opportunity to kind of define what it is to go to a conventional eye doctor, and then what it is then to go to an eye doctor who has delved into the areas of natural eyesight improvement. And we are all different. We have slightly different backgrounds. We obviously are different people, but there is a basic framework that we have all learned. And so we all have the understanding that this is not only a possibility, but we know how to help people to move into that. And that's exciting. It's just an exciting profession and an exciting thing to model.
What I've seen though, when I've talked to people or what they've voiced to me is that a lot of people think that if they go to vision therapy, it's for improving their visual acuity. And I don't think that that's true across the board with vision therapy doctors. I think there's just a few like you who want to do natural vision improvement of the acuity piece, you know. And can you speak to that a little bit about, how you go about that, how you're different than maybe some of the more traditional practitioners, and what you're talking about in these chapters, maybe.
Yeah, so that's a really excellent point and an astute observation on your part, because you've dived so deeply into the field, really, more than most, definitely more than the lion's share of eye doctors. Um, so, in optometry school, for example, in the rotation that I did through pediatrics, the emphasis was on helping a person to improve their depth perception, their tracking ability, and their visual spatial awareness, and their reading, and things that help them to perform in our complex um, digital world, we'll say now, okay,
Mhm.
because that's what it is. In the old days, way back in the old days, 10 years ago, it had improving reading and, a little bit on purpose that it is that I've published just a book so far and not anything electronically. That's on purpose for now, for a very clear reason I'm recognizing right here, right now, because there's something about picking up a book in your hands and turning the pages and understanding the boundaries of a chapter and how many pages that took, and understanding what an index is and a reference section, and flipping back and forth physically with my soma, with my body, with my two hands holding the covers of this hardback book in this case.
Right.
But so I learned about those things, and my colleagues know about those things that have gone on to educate themselves, either through schooling or through other optometrists or books or courses about how to help in those areas. And when we help people in those areas, often if they are continuing in very stressful situations, um, such as sitting in front of your cell phone or your computer at 16, 18, 24, 36 inches for 8 hours, 10 hours, 12 hours a day, your visual acuity may not improve.
Mhm.
It may be that you have to integrate other lifestyle shifts and changes, uh, and if you find yourself still in these situations of high stress, your visual acuity, it may stay the same or it may get worse. There's a possibility that it will improve, but it may not. And it's not been an emphasis, for example, that I was taught about in the conventional way, even if vision therapy is considered integrative and alternative, which indeed it is to this day. Visual acuity is not necessarily an emphasis, and it's not something I was really even aware of very much at all in optometry school. I may have spoken about this in the last podcast, but there was an ophthalmologist in the last century named Bates, and he was really interested in helping people to improve their visual acuity. And we did not learn about him in optometry school. In fact, he was pretty much thrown out of the field of ophthalmology because of his success, ironically, in helping people to improve their visual acuity. And so what I have done, to go above and beyond and learn about this, and I still practice this. I mean, I'm still working on it. So I'll play right now, and Denise can see that I've just put on some pinhole glasses. And now she's putting on her pinhole glasses, and hers are more fancy than mine because I'm reading in front of them and they say life in color on one lens, and on the other one, it has some sort of fancy design that, to be quite honest, I cannot even figure out let me see, I'm going to pin her now in front of me. It's kind of a pyramid or a triangle, and there's some triangles within that. I guess it's a logo, and I don't even know what life in color is. I'll have to look it up later, but my pinhole glasses came from a man named Peter Grunewald, and he's not paying me to say this, but he's written some incredible books, eye-body books. He's out of New Zealand. He started out as an Alexander teacher, a form of movement, and he let go of 11 diopters of myopia or nearsightedness, which is like unheard of in my field. But now I know, hey, this is possible. And I've studied with him on several occasions when he comes to the United States. I haven't yet made it to his 3-week program in New Zealand, but I've read and digested his books. I integrate that work into the work that I do for myself and to others. But my point is that Dr. Bates in the last century, you can go back to his original readings. You can work with a natural eyesight improvement person who's not necessarily an eye doctor, but that does natural eyesight improvement. Recently, after speaking at the Optometrists and Vision Development and Rehabilitation Association in San Francisco in April of 2024, I met Mayor Schneider. I don't know if you or your followers have heard of him, but I spent an afternoon with him by the side of the ocean and in his office in San Francisco. And he drove me from his office to a Thai restaurant a number of blocks away, and he is legally blind. And I had second thoughts about it after I got into the car with him. And then I realized, although he functions in many ways as a blind person, he has developed his peripheral awareness, his depth perception, his sensory motor awareness to such a degree, and he probably shouldn't be driving, but he does locally. I don't know how much more than locally, but it was okay because he knows where he is in space and he knows the landmarks, and he's way more informed and aware probably than 95% of people who are driving, who take for granted their visual spatial skills, right? They just take it for granted because they have developed habits that are good, but maybe not good enough, right? And so now I'm removing my pinhole glasses because I'm realizing I haven't been wearing them that much and I don't want to overdo it, right? And now I'm noticing Denise is blinking a little bit extra. Let's bring our blinking to conscious awareness, and let's bring our breath to conscious awareness. And let's come back into the presence of the moment. But what was the question? The question was, what is the difference between what I do and what I offer and maybe some of my colleagues? Um, I think as you become an informed consumer of vision care, and maybe after you listen to this interview, you can go into whoever it is that is your eye doctor and say, hey, I also want to work on improving my visual acuity, if it's a developmental optometrist, along with these other things that you're helping me with. Let's look into that together. Hey, have you heard of Bates? Have you heard of Peter Grunwald? Have you heard of Dr. Elisa Beth Haransky-Beck, the one with the long name who goes by many names? Have you heard of Sam Byrne or Jacob Lieberman? These are those of us now. I'm in that camp of people who have gone way beyond the traditional approaches because we've been hungry for just rising to our highest potential. And I just love this. I love it. I love talking about it. Obviously, I love that I've finished writing a book about it that is integrative. And in my view, my very biased view, I've written a book like no other book on the planet because I took the leap of faith and combined all the things, that I happen to be having a background in. But it turns out, if you examine your own life, you will probably recognize that you have been either schooled or you have experienced many things in your own life. And, you can rise into your own gifts, whatever they are, and you can combine them together. You don't have to compartmentalize them anymore, and so I'll tell you a little bit about the movement chapters, which is the next section of the book. And the movement chapters, there's 3 chapters on movement. Chapter 5, moving within. Chapter 6, embodying our eyesight and vision through experiential embodied movement as the basis of vision development and natural eyesight improvement. And I think it's in chapter 6 where I literally write out the beginning of a movement sequence that I learned decades ago from Bonnie Bainbridge Cohen, the brilliant founder of Body Mind Movement. No, that's Mark Taylor, Body Mind Centering. And I really write out in detail this movement patterning that you can play with on your own, and know that you're working with the deep reflex patterns that underlie vision development. And then in chapter 7, I write about connecting with our depth and dimensionality through our vision, which I've talked about a little bit here. And I weave vision through and through the movement chapters. And it's just, I really, when I was writing this book and doing the final edits, like at the very last minute, towards the end of 2023 and the beginning of 2024, before I submitted my final manuscript, I started changing some of the sections within some of the chapters around. I started jockeying them back and forth because I realized that everything is so interwoven that so many of the parts could have gone somewhere else. And I really played with it post-editing. I worked with a wonderful editor, who I recommend, especially if you're in the healthcare field, Robin Quinn, word for word. She's out of Los Angeles. Shout out to Robin Quinn. But after I stopped working with her, I still was moving some stuff around. One, she had really helped me quite a bit already. So I didn't need any more, commas or capitalizations or, that kind of thing, semicolons. And I didn't need any more sentence structure, but I thought, wait. And then I took some things from the vision section and I moved them to the end of the movement section because I thought, let's weave this together, because what if somebody's just drawn to one of the sections in my book? What if they're just reading that? I want them to have some of everything, coming back to this mycelial connections and the excitement of, we were taught in school, we were raised up. This is the subject of English, and this is the subject of math, and this is the subject of biology, and this is the subject of chemistry, and this is the subject of literature, and we didn't. Our teachers were few and far between that really combined everything. And I still remember my humanities teacher in high school, Mrs. Parrott, who I just saw at my 45th high school reunion, who interwove everything. And I remember, and she stuck out in my mind. And Mr. Collier, my advanced biology teacher in high school, who used to tell us funny jokes that really, his humor stuck out in my mind. And I recognized that, biology can be funny. All these little, paramecium, these little creatures kind of floating around the place. And he may not have told a joke about that, but everything was light and fun. And so how do we do that? And so my nutrition section, I have 5 chapters on that because that's what my master's thesis was on. But I stuck to the healthy part of my master's thesis, nutrition. Chapter 8, considering plant-based foodism and the vegan lifestyle. Oh no, some people say when you mention the word vegan, it's the kiss of death. Well, I've been brave in putting it in a chapter title. I took it out of the title of my book. I call it nutrition, not veganism, because I took that a little bit seriously. I don't want people to put up their defenses, but chapter 9, plant-based foodie basics, that was to be the title of my book in 2019, plant-based foodie. Chapter 10, the journey continues, going deeper. Oh, going deeper through nutrition. What does that have to do with anything? Chapter 11, whole food vegan recipes, also known as plant food. And then chapter 12, moving deeper within integration and refinements. And then, the book goes on into the nature section, just two chapters. Some who have known me for many decades may be surprised that my nature section is so small based on the nonprofits I've founded that have everything to do with nature. But I didn't write that much about that. What I did write about, chapter 13, exploring our connections to nature, and chapter 14, connecting more dots. I've kept it a little bit mysterious, but a little bit of a spoiler is that I do really go into GMOs because I think it's incumbent upon us in this day and age and at these moments to understand what is going on in our food system and in our medical system. And I'll leave it at that. And you have to read between the lines to recognize what the mycelial connections are in these 2 chapters, which are incredibly important. And then in the spirit chapters, the last 3 chapters of the book, 15, 16, and 17, chapter 15, beginning, chapter 16, from her story to Shabbos, or the Sabbath. As a Jewish woman, I do talk a lot, not a lot maybe, but I do talk about Judaism and what it means to take a day of the week and rest. Stepping away from what you usually do, no matter what your religious background or spiritual tradition is, it doesn't matter. If you go, as you go into your indigenous roots, you will see that woven through is at least one day of rest. And so at this point in my life, what I do is I disconnect from social media, I disconnect from electronics for 24 hours from Friday night to Saturday night. Will you choose all day Sunday? Will you choose another day of the week? What will your Sabbath be? I encourage you to at least start with 1 hour a week, start with a half a day a week, start with something, and then eventually, ultimately, as you rise into your, your trueness, you will find that your Sabbath is every moment, right? But my chapter 17, the final chapter, from Torah and the truth to new beginnings, what is your essence that you want to begin anew? And then beyond page 280, I think 280, I don't know, 296, I think. Beyond page 296 of my book, I call it the outtakes because I hadn't been working with my editor after that. And so it's my outtakes because it's not edited in the professional way that my editor, Robin Quinn, and the people at Balboa Press edited it. It gives you a taste. The writing gives you a taste of how I'm a little bit redundant, how it's a little bit probably it could have been more streamlined. It's not as organized as it could be. But from page, I'm looking at the back of the book right now. The book really ends, the formal section really ends at page 299, page 300, which is a blank page. And then, well, the references and resources are heavily edited and they're in good form. And the index, I had an incredible, Cindy Cohn, the indexer, was incredible. She did this whole index in 2 weeks. I can't even understand it. She was the last person to look at my book, and she came back after 2 weeks with this unbelievable index. But there's, about the author, share your story, working with Elisa B., and the layers of acknowledgement run deep, and my stepping into the developmental optometry paradigm. These parts, page 300 to on, those are the outtakes, and I'm kind of making a joke about it now because I was so done and so ready to publish this book by that time that I just released it. I turned it over and I said, God, Spirit, Source, I'm done. I'm done. And I believe that it turned out beautifully. I'm very excited about it. And I'm slowly releasing the book into the world. And I'm honored that you were able to, make this space for me today, Denise. And I really hope that I gave at least an encapsulation of what people are in for if they choose to pick up my book. It is available through Balboa Press. If you put in the title, Enlivening Consciousness, and my name, Elisa Beth Haransky-Beck, the link to order the book will pop up. So if you're in the continental United States, it's easy. There's tax based on where you live, which state, but there's no shipping fee. Now, if you live outside the continental United States, say in China or India or Europe somewhere, or New Zealand or Australia or South America or Central America, or anywhere else in the world, Trinidad, Tobago, contact me directly through my website, enliveningconsciousness.com. And we will figure out how to get a book to you. So far, my book is not on Amazon. It's not Barnes and Noble, because of a lot of reasons. Right now, whether or not I release the book in that way will remain to be seen. But for now, it's going to be this way, and we'll see what develops. By the next time you interview me, when you come back from your China journey or from China, you never know.
Do you have time to speak a little bit to the artwork that you chose for this book? Because I find it fascinating.
Oh, I would love to. And I'm sure Eli Hellman, the incredible artist, would like that too. I'll have to tell him about this interview so he can share it with his followers. But Eli Hellman, I discovered at the Three Rivers Arts Festival many years ago. The Three Rivers Arts Festival is a wonderful 10-day free arts festival that happens in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania every summer. In fact, I was just able to present Eli with one of my books. The festival just happened at the end of May, beginning of June. And he's a self-taught artist. I'll read what it says about him at the back of the book. He was born in 1978, and he's spent thousands of hours meticulously crafting highly detailed ink drawings. He emphasizes intricately drawn lines and patterns. He explores eclectic subjects, and he goes on, and his original works are drawn by hand with micron pens. These are like, I mean, the tip of these pens in black ink are literally practically microscopic on paper. Some pieces take him more than 200 hours to complete. And since 2010, he's been a full-time artist traveling around the country showing his work at art festivals. He lives in Western Massachusetts. And his website is elihellman.com. Don't put the www in front. He did tell me, oh no, when he looked at this, piece. I said, Eli, this is what you gave me to write. He said, oh, but when you put in the www, it doesn't work anymore. You'll still find him. But when you go to his website, you'll see some interesting, whimsical artwork. I personally love his trees. And I actually had him commission the very first tree you see in the book, which has its own special page before the page that says contents. When you look at that tree, and I'm showing it just to Denise, she can see it, but it's a woven trunk. And I commissioned this work. I have the original because I thought it was going to be the cover of the book. But he does such detailed work that I realized, and this is the actual size of the work, if you can believe this.
Wow.
It's so detailed, you can't even get over it.
Mhm.
Yes, he is. I don't think he would mind me saying this. He is myopic. He is nearsighted. I can't wait to read my book to shift his visual awareness, but he did this piece for me. I bought it from him. And then I realized if I used it for the cover of my book, I wouldn't have room for the title or the subtitle or my name in a font that anybody would be able to see. So what I did was I used another piece of his art, which he calls sundala. If you look at, I'm flipping through the book, facing page 1 of the book, the sundala. I always love this. It reminds me of a paramecium, but a paramecium is more oblong, but it has like cilia on the outside. Some people might call it a mandala. But the woman who designed my website, Mary Long, took that design. I gave it to her, and she created, really, if you look at the landing page of my website, she created the image of, she reversed the colors. Do you see? And she made a blue background, blue purpley background, and the image is more white. And then when the publisher Balboa Press asked me to give them ideas, if I wanted to give them ideas for my book cover, I did a screenshot of my homepage on my website, and my website was created like back in 2020. Lo and behold, they just took it practically verbatim and they made it into my cover, which was fascinating to me. And so I thank Mary Long. At least, I don't know which edition. I think you have that edition of the book, the February 27th edition of the book. I thank her on the copyright page because she really designed the book cover. Although Balboa Press, of course, put it together. But I used his art. And then throughout the book, I chose in front of each section. So each section is at least 2 chapters. And in front of the facing chapter, I used one of Eli's pieces of art. So for example, page 80, facing the first chapter of the movement section, I used, this artwork is called, I think, Ibex and Kid. My husband said I should have put the names. Yes, I should have put the names of the artworks. He says, come on, Melissa, in your next edition. I'm like, don't rush me. This book just came out. me, but maybe I'll put it on my website. I'll put the names of the artworks. But this kind of is it, you know, you're listening to this. It's an image of an ibex, which is apparently an animal that is native to Africa, I believe. And there's a baby kind of standing on the back of its mother, or maybe its father, and the curvature in the neck and the spine of the animal is just so revealing to me. And it just reminds me of this moving inward, you know, into our somas, into our bodies, and just this beautiful connection between parent and child. And but anyway, so that's the story of that particular image. And each image that I chose, it, you know, had to do with the section you know, the spirit section. I used facing page 257. So page 256, I used a hamsa, a hand, which has a yin yang in it. It has roots, it has birds, it has planets, it has an eye. You know, I've only alluded in our book, yes, it is our book, for the planet, for the cosmos, in our book, I've alluded to our third eye, our pineal gland. I haven't written about it in the book because that's, you know, that comes in my coursework, in my, you know, really deep diving. But this book, again, in my biased way, is a really wonderful introduction to how we can rise into our highest potential. So that gives you a pretty good idea of the art, you know, and the artist. And he was very excited when he saw the book. He's like, wow, my art is featured in here. And I said, well, yeah, because in the package that I chose from Balboa Press, 10 black and white images were included.
Okay.
And so he was perfect for that. He was perfect for that. And so one more, I can't resist. Page 239, I use his roots image. And that is just exquisite. I mean, it's just like
it is.
root underneath the earth. It's like you could meditate looking at this, you know, and it could be your brain, it could be an eye, it could be your feet, like just connecting into the earth, you know. And so, yeah, I encourage you to go to his website and take a look, because you'll be surprised. He's got some great images. I chose my favorites, and I had to choose images that were vertical because my book is in a 6x9 format. So there were several others that I wanted to use that are horizontal. He said, no, we can't easily use that one, Elisa, because it's a different format. He was really great at helping me to, he supplied the images just in the right form that the publisher understood, and it was like seamless. And he was so gracious in you know, in this. But yeah, thank you again. Do you have any other questions you want to ask?
One of the things that I was thinking about earlier as you were talking was that online, when people are talking about vision, there's so little discussion about how we have control over what happens with our vision, you know, and so when I made a comment at one point that my vision had gotten better, and a doctor, I think he was an OD of some sort. I don't think he was a developmental optometrist, but I don't really know. He said, "Oh, it's normal for people's eyes to get better as they age." And I thought, interesting that you would say that, because that's not the narrative normally. And he just discounted all of the efforts that I had been making to improve my vision naturally. And it was really frustrating for me. I didn't say anything. I just let the whole thing go. But I thought, you know, there's this, it, w- we're saying what's convenient in the moment, you know, and a lot of the doctors, I think, don't encourage natural vision improvement because it takes effort. It takes taking responsibility for our vision. And I think that's where our message is for a certain type of person, right? Who's willing. to take responsibility?
I think that is a beautiful way to segue into the next time we do an interview. But I will say something short about that.
Mm.
There is something, you are 100%, 1,000% correct. There is something, and so is the doctor. There
Mhm.
is something to this thing about how your vision improves when you get older. Okay. So in school, we learned about something called second sight. And it happens when you're between the ages, as your eyes become what's called presbyopic.
Mhm.
There also is some sort of, and it's not something that's been well studied. I can tell you it's not documented in the literature at all that I know of. If anybody who's listening to this or anybody finds anything about it in the literature, please let me know. But there is a relaxation that occurs in maybe the ciliary body, the lens of the eye. There's something that happens that often allows people to see a little bit more clearly, literally, acuity wise, sometimes. Um, However, it does not talk about an improvement in depth perception or tracking ability or the ability to overcome and work through strabismus or amblyopia or these different things. And so that could be the topic at our next, meeting, or if you interview another optometrist who would like to talk about that, because that is a thing, this thing called second sight.
Mhm.
At the same time, you're 100% correct that natural eyesight improvement as a whole is absolutely not talked about. And the idea of second sight is not talked about because you've probably never heard of it. You didn't know what he was talking about. He didn't know what you were talking about because you were really talking about two different things,
Yeah.
but it's really all part of one thing, two parts of one thing. And
Mhm.
so as we get more mature, I'd like to say some parts of us tighten up because of habit patterns, but there's other parts of us that for whatever reason start to relax. And there is something to this. There's like something to talk about this because we all know who have reached this level of maturity that as we get more mature, we don't care as much. It's not that we don't care. We don't put as much focus on certain types of things, for example, like in my case, maybe some people do, but I honor my wrinkles because that means that I'm still around. And I honor my the fact that I kind of am a little stiff when I wake up in the morning. So that reminds me to do my somatics. Because if I don't, I'm not as happy a person. Okay. So these are gifts. These are gifts, and there is a physiological basis. And we do have to you brought up another incredibly important thing, taking self responsibility.
Yeah.
Thank you again because the bell's ringing. Thank
Yeah.
you again. Thanks so
Thank you.
much.
Thank you for sharing all of that with us today. You have a great day. Thank you for listening to the Healing Our Sight podcast. I'd love to hear from you. Please share and also join our Facebook community at Healing Our Sight to leave suggestions or comments. Have a great day.